Mr. Pete Wishart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and can I congratulate the honourable member for Manchester Gorton for securing this very important debate, and can I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for ensuring that this debate has been granted. And it is a bit unfortunate we have to have a debate such as this on Standing Order 24, and the way the government has responded to this debate, I think, has been, to say at the very least, disappointing. Now, there's lots of things I call the Leader of the House. I call her charming, I'd call her helpful, I'd call her a bit Brexitish, but I think that she's been less than sensible in the way that she's approached the issues to do with money resolutions in the House. And to continue to defy the majority opinion and view of this House consistently and over a period of time does her no credit whatsoever. The House has made a decision when it has come to these money resolutions, and it's incumbent upon government to ensure that the wills of this House is progressed. And I think where we are just now is really very disappointing when it comes not just to the important private member's bill from the honourable gentleman, but particularly from the private member's bill from my honourable friend, the member for Inhilligan Yar, who has severe and great cross-party support and consensus right across this House in order for this progressed, to make sure that his bill at least be able to get through. Because what the government seems to be doing, and it is back to a pattern that was seen established since it was elected as minority government in 2016, and that is its failure to acknowledge the fact that it is a minority government. It's already doesn't appear properly to engage in opposition debates. It certainly doesn't vote in the vast majority of them. It's stuffed the standing committees of this House with a majority, even though it is a minority government. It's done its best to ensure that the DUP have been given their £1 billion in order to ensure that some of its legislation gets through. And it seems to be, again, consistent with the way it approaches this, the way that it has dealt with private members' bills. But we are not going to let them get in the way of our private members' bills. And I think we should say to this government, loud and clearly, get your grubby hands off our private members' bills, because they are far too important and valuable to not just this House, but to our constituents right across this country. Increasingly, private members' bills are valued by our constituents, and they want to see legislation progress through this mechanism, and increasingly we see that reflected in all our mailbags. And the arrangements for private members' bills are bad enough, what being at the mercy of the honourable member from Shipley, and I know he's changed his coat today, but the honourable member from Christchurch, who consistently do what they can to block and to filibuster on bills such as this. Instead of thwarting private members' bills, I think it's incumbent upon everybody in this House to ensure that they're properly enabled and supported, because what private members' bills do is to show this House at its very, very best. And all of us in this House have a passing interest in ensuring that these are dealt with properly, because we all want to be champions of private members' bills. We're all like that little bit of a legacy where we've been able in some small way to shape legislation as a little bit of a contribution to our times as members of Parliament. Of course I give way to one.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does he share my frustration that the Procedure Committee in the previous Parliament, I believe in the Parliament before that, and I believe in the current Parliament, have undertaken a considerable amount of time looking at the private members' bill system and have come up with very sensible proposals, for example allowing the Backbench Business Committee to allocate the first 4 bills, so that bills that command support from across the whole House can make progress. That's not dissimilar to the very sensible system they have in the Scottish Parliament, where, again, provided there's consensus, bills can move forward instead of the government having an effective veto.
And I'm grateful to him, honourable friend, because I think he really gets to the point of what this is about. These are popular things. These are what our constituents like. This is the type of work they want to see us doing, working together, working consensually, progressing bills which are of interest. And I can commend the honourable member for Rhondda, because he went around it exactly the right way by asking the people of this country, what do you want for me to take forward as a private member's bill, given I'm number 1? That's the type of approach that our constituents increasingly want to see us conduct in this House, instead of the usual stuff that they observe, particularly in set-piece opportunities like private members' bills. So instead of thwarting the progressive bills, get behind them, support them, make sure that this country gets what it seems to want. Because to be successful now in a private member's bills, there's 3 really big tests that you have to overcome. First, you've got to beat all the rest of your colleagues to get on that ballot. And it is remarkable, isn't it? Nearly, I think it was 95% of members of this House applied to ensure that they could get a private member's bill. That's how popular they are. So first you've got to get at least in the top 10, possibly in our top 20, just to get your bill to second reading. Then you've got to get it to second reading. And that's a tough task to get that through that second reading debate. You'll need 100 members down here to ensure you've got a closure motion. It's on a Friday, traditionally when we're all in our constituents, hard-pressed as we are, to respond to some of our constituents' interests. You've also got to work cross-party. You've also got to try and get a range of support across this House. You've got to work consensually. You've got to be at the mercy of the filibuster of our good friend, the member from Christchurch, when he gets to his feet to try and ensure that it's blocked and disrupted. But if you've done all of that and you get it through, it's now the third test. And that is, does it meet the approval of this government? Because quite simply what this government could now do is just decide, we don't like this bill, we're not going to give it money resolution, and that's effectively it killed off, or at least put into private members' purgatory. And that's what's happened with the Honourable Member's bill just now. Why are we accepting this? Why are we prepared to allow this government to block democratic decisions of this House to stop something that is clearly popular? Now, I've got a very neat and elegant solution to this, Mr. Speaker. Take it out of the hands of government. If you have a private member's bill that is passed in second reading, an automatic money resolution must therefore follow. Now, I know, and I've heard the Leader of the House consistently and ad nauseam say it's within the gift of the government, this is what their opportunities and obligations are. She's quoted Escrid May, she's told us what convention is. Doesn't matter. We don't care less about all of this. If it's a convention, make a new convention. If it's a tradition, start a new sense about how we do these things. If it's an Erskine May, let's review and revisit it. If it's in the standing orders of the House, let's change them. But let's ensure that we deal with this, because we are letting this House down and we are letting our constituents down with the arrangements we have in place for private members' bill. Let's take back control. Now, where have I heard that before? Oh yes, that's about what this House is supposed to be doing. How about we exercise and demonstrate a bit of it ourselves? I give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
To the Honourable Gentleman for giving way, and he said, you know, we have to show that this House is listening to our constituents. Can he tell me how many people in Perth and North Perthshire have spoken to him specifically about the money resolution on the Honourable Gentleman's bill?
I could tell the Honourable Gentleman, and I have to say I was very much impressed with his skills in the Scottish Cup final the other day, and his recovery techniques I think was absolutely superb. It was a highlight of the game for me. But can I say to him that in terms of private member bills, my mailbag is overwhelming and full with all types of of private members' bills that people find favour with, and I'm pretty certain that the Honourable Members is exactly the same too. But another solution for the government in its approach to this: if you do not like a bill, come to this House and explain why you don't like a bill. Don't hide behind process, don't hide behind procedure, don't try to block all types of private members' bill because you have the means and the capability and capacity to do so. Argue your case on the floor of the House. Now, I actually think the government's got a case when it comes to the Honourable Gentleman's bill. It tells us about the review is underway. Yeah, of course it is. Yes, this House seemed to back it. It didn't give the government a majority in the last election. I think that's where the leaders got it wrong. But take it here. Let's hear the arguments and debates for why this government believes that we shouldn't progress this bill. And if it has its way and there's a majority in favour of it, that's what the government will do. But if it doesn't get its way, and this House clearly tells it wants to pursue a different approach, it's up to the government to listen to that and to respect that. Democracy starts with respecting the wishes of this House, and we start to get into some very dangerous territory when that is so casually overlooked. Let's get back to making sure that if this House speaks, this government responds and acts on that very, very clear decision. And I just want to mention a little bit about the Honourable Gentleman's bill, because it's an important bill. It's a bill that I personally support, and I've spoken in the previous bill when Pat Glass was trying to take it through Parliament. What his bill is trying to do, and the critical feature of this, is to defend the number of members of Parliament in this House. And isn't it something else where over the weekend we get extra unelected members of the House of Lords? Isn't that something that this government want to cut the number of directly elected members of Parliament while increasing that absurd circus down the corridor with members of Parliament. Apparently this is all because it's embarrassed about the success defeat this government's had at the hands of the House of Lords. Apparently they're not the right type of legislators. So what this government's going to do is just appoint the right type of legislators. Isn't it absolutely and utterly absurd? And we have the gall. Yes, of course.
I mean, his first half of his speech, when he was actually talking about the money resolution, was great. But as I understand it, my part is, how many peers? 7 or 8 peers? Only one of them is a Brexiteer.
Well, I can sense the honourable gentleman's pain in all of this, but I've seen the petition. I think there's 150,000 people across this country now have called for the abolition of the House of Lords. I listened very keenly to the honourable gentleman from Somerset, who has now started to say and suggest that there is something perfidious about the nature of the House of Lords, and he has now got lots of doubts about their constitutional role. I think they're on their last legs when it comes to this, and I think that there maybe is a coalition across this House that might be able to adequately deal with this. Because, you know, there's only 22 countries around the world that have a chamber like this. We're in the company of the Russias, the Madagascars, the Omans, the Saudi Arabias with having a fully appointed chamber. It profoundly embarrasses this country, and it has to be addressed. And how dare we have the gall to lecture the developing world about the quality of its democracy when we have that absurd institution down the road? Yeah. And I want to just say something ever so gently and hopefully friendly to my friends in the Labour Party. What on earth are you doing appointing members of Lords to that absurd circus down the road? You're just culpable with this government when it comes to this, putting more people into this absurd institution. Comrade Lords, taking their place with the nation's aristocrats, party donors, bishops and failed politicians, backing sound socialist values of deference, know your place, furlock tugging and the hereditary principle. Well done, the Labour Party. Isn't that something else to be proud of? What you have to do, and until you stop putting people in the House of Lords, you are no better than them. I'll give way to the honourable gentleman.
Most grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way. I understand his principled objection to the House of Lords and what comes out of it. Can we, this House, take it as read that he will be opposing any amendments that ever come through from the House of Lords on any legislation?
That's just an absurd argument. And you know something? This is what it comes to. They're not wanting to abolish the House of Lords because it's absurd, because it's an embarrassment, because it is just a circus. They want to abolish the House of Lords because it's doing the right thing. That's how absurd it is when it comes to this. Now, Mr. Speaker, we want to cut. Apparently, this government wants to cut the number of directly elected members of Parliament to this House, just at the point when the workload of us in this House is about to increase as we dramatically get rid of 73 members of the European Parliament as a result of their clueless Brexit. Yes. The responsibilities that are exercised currently by our MEPs will be a matter for an even smaller pool of members of Parliament. For the last time, I'll give way to the honourable gentleman at the back.
I am most grateful to the honourable gentleman. Could I just clarify a point he just made on that last comment? Is he suggesting that, after the vote for Brexit was taken, that we should keep MEPs at a minimum?
Of course I'm not. Of course I'm not saying that. I don't know what sort of is missed in all of this. We have 73 members of the European Parliament just now. They will be gone. He and I and all members of this House are therefore going to have an increased workload. There are going to be more select committees. Yep. There'll be a same size of executive to ensure it's scrutinised, because I'm not talking about cutting the size of government. So that's the type of issue we're going to have to. And lastly,
I just very gently say to the honourable gentleman for Perth and North Perthshire that if I'm being charitable, I will say he was diverted from the path of virtue by the spontaneous intervention of the honourable gentleman for Elmet and Rothwell. But periodic animadversion to membership of the House of Lords is one thing, but a constant and unceasing dilation upon it is another. The former is orderly, but the latter is not. Mr. Pete Wishart.
Very grateful to your guidance, and I will not be driven to speak about the House of Lords any further by any honourable member in this House, Mr. Speaker, at least not for the next few minutes, the next end of this debate. I will conclude, Mr. Speaker. The credibility of Parliament is on the line. I think the affection that the public hold this House is very much in question by the way that we deal with these things. The public like the private members' bill system. They want to see more of it, not less of it. They want to see a government in a position where it's supported and enabled, not stymied and stopped and trying to be blocked by all matters of procedural techniques. Why don't we vow today to say round this House that our private members' bill system is something that we very much have a lot of affection for, that we want to see work, and we're going to support it, and we're going to start supporting it by ensuring if you get passed in a second reading, you get a money resolution and you get your bill through.
After the